Changes in slope and y-intercept. So changing m, or the slope, affects the graph by changing the steepness. So if you don't know what steepness is, think about when you're climbing up a mountain. Steepness is the tilt. So like if I were climbing up a really steep mountain, it would look like this. If I were climbing up a less steep mountain, it might look like this. So changing the y-intercept affects the graph by shifting it up or down. Alright, so let's look at the first one. How does the graph of y equals 2x plus 8 compare to 9x plus 8? So I notice the only thing changing is the slope. So y equals 2x plus 8 and y equals 9x plus 8. The only thing changed was the slope. So the slope went from 2 to 9. So when the slope goes from 2 to 9, if you're not really sure how it looks, type it in the y equals part of your calculator and look at the graph. This in y1, this in y2. But the graph would get steeper. So the bigger the number of the slope, and this is ignoring negatives, the steeper the graph. So without even graphing it, since I know that 9 is bigger than 10, this graph is going to be steeper than the graph with the slope of 2x. So let's look at the next one. Y equals negative 4x minus 9, and y equals 1/2 x minus 9. So same y-intercept, the only thing that changed was the slope. So the slope went from a negative 4 to a half. So remember, the bigger the number, ignoring the fact that there's a negative there, the steeper the slope. So this one would be steeper than this. So the graph got less steep. The graph got less steep. All right, let's look at the next one. How does the graph of y equals 2x minus 5 compare with the graph of 2x plus 3? So we notice here that what's changing is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept went from a negative 5 to a positive 3. So in this case, my graph went from crossing the y-axis down here to crossing the y-axis up here at 3. So that means my graph shifted up 8, because going from negative 5 to positive 3 is 8 units. So let's look at the next one. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 8, and y equals negative 2/3 x plus 0. Because there's nothing at the end of this equation, so it'd just be plus 0. So the only thing changing is my y-intercept. So my y-intercept went from 8 to 0. So my graph shifted down, because it went from 8 to 0, 8. All right, let's look at some word problems. Lane wants to buy a 3D TV. He saved some money and is thinking about making a $600 down payment and is making a monthly payment of $150. So let's first write an equation for that. Y equals $600 plus the $150 monthly payment he's going to make. Lane is also considering using this equation. P equals 400 plus 200M, where P is the amount of money he paid after making M months of payments toward the TV, and M is the number of months, as a model to show how to pay for his TV. So what is the difference in the two plans? Well, I noticed the slope went from the slope is the number before the M, so it went from 150 to 200. So 150 to 200. So what did he change? The slope got steeper, but what did it mean in the problem situation? He's going to be paying $50 more each month. So let's look at the y-intercept. So the y-intercept went from 600 to 400. So the graph shifts down, and now instead of making a down payment of $600, he's making a down payment of $400. So let's look at the next one. John paints houses. He charges an hourly rate and a base fee for his services as modeled by the equation C equals 75 plus 25H. So C equals 75 plus 25H, where C is the total amount charged and H is the number of hours he works. He decides to change his hourly rate to $10 more. So changing the hourly rate changes the 25 to 35. And he decides to change his original base fee to $50. So let's look at the slope. The slope went from 25 to 35. So I know it got steeper, the graph. And that also meant that he changed his per hour rate from 25 to 35. So the y-intercept, the 75 and the 50, it went from 75 to 50, so I know it shifted down. So that means his base fee went from $75 to $50.